For the 2023 season, Ferrari have made major changes to the SF-23, with particular attention paid to the entire front end of the car. This is in response to this season's mandatory changes to the floor, with every team having to raise their floor edges by 15mm to combat the phenomenon known as porpoising. Now, one problem with this rule change is that it has long been rumoured that the total lap time lost with this change will equate to roughly half a second. So, the teams naturally are trying to find solutions around this change to such a pivotal part of the car. And Ferrari have worked tirelessly on the front end of their SF-23 to compensate for these very changes. Everything you see here, from the front wing to the end plates to the suspension, has been reworked with the aim of providing their new challenger more aero, a better balance, while also shedding a couple of pounds in the weight department. Let's go into detail regarding these changes that have been made. But before we move any further into the video, if you're new around here, consider subscribing to the channel, as I will be creating much more content around all the Formula 1 teams and of course the upcoming pre-season tests. I plan on having videos out every hour or every 2 hours throughout those 3 days in Bahrain. Right, on with the video. For starters, from the naked eye, a comparison between that of the SF-23's front end and last year's Ferrari show a great deal of change has taken place. The main striking change is that of where the nose now connects to the front wing, with it now being connected to the second main plane on this year's SF-23 instead of all the way to the front as it was in the previous year. Another element to consider with the SF-23 now, of course, is that it's shorter as a result of this change, helping the Ferrari team to save weight in their bid to come under the minimum weight limit. It also should be noted that the radiators for this year, along with the chassis itself, have been made lighter, further helping to reduce weight. The change to where the nose now connects to the front wing has made it more difficult for the team to pass the crash tests this year, but it was a change the team naturally felt would benefit the overall aero philosophy and balance of the car, and this change helps to generate more downforce at the front end as well. The straights which Mercedes tried to run on the W13 last season make a return, this time on the SF-23. With the aim of creating outwash. Or, to put it in more simpler terms, it's to guide the airflow that comes off of the front wing towards the intended area that they wish it to go. And that is along the front of the tyres and around, towards the side pods. So for those of you who aren't kind of savvy on why teams want to generate outwash, it's because if they were to leave this airflow unmanaged, it would have an adverse effect on the airflow at the leading edge of the side pods and underfloor. So essentially what would be happening here is you would have the natural airflow that the engineers had manufactured with the side pods, but then you'd also have this secondary airflow coming off of the front wing without this outwash effect. And so you'd have a kind of converging of these two airflows where they'll kind of be, in a sense, bouncing off of one another, or perhaps kind of converging, but this would have a negative effect on what the team was trying to do with the airflow throughout the entirety of their car. As for the end plate of the front wing, not much has really changed except for the shape of the vane itself, which will have an influence on front tyre wake. Moving further back to the suspension of the SF-23, they have made substantial changes as alluded to by Cardile. The suspension compartment has been completely redesigned. On the one hand, to support the aerodynamicists in obtaining the results we had set for ourselves in the off-season, so that the geometry of the car has been adapted to the new flow structures that has been generated with this new set of regulations, without neglecting the possibility of increasing the car's adjustment capabilities on the track. This is something that was very evident in the second half of the season last year after the technical directive was introduced. So with all that in mind, the biggest changes is that of the suspension arms. While sticking with their push rod design, they have of course lowered the steering track rod so that the nose now is more in line with that of the chassis. And of course this is going to help the airflow rise towards the S-Duct tunnels on either side of the side pod, showing to all of us that every part of this car has long been thought over and deliberate in its designs. Nothing has been rushed or put onto this car without thought and careful consideration. And hopefully this is a trend that continues throughout the rest of the season. Hopefully all these changes are going to add up to Ferrari being extremely competitive at the start of the season and throughout the entirety of it. I think we all want to see a Ferrari team at the top of its capabilities, which is something we have not seen in a very long time. Right guys, so that's the end of the video. I hope you've all enjoyed it. If you have, please do leave a like on the video, and any comments you have, please leave them down below. Right, I will catch you all at pre-season testing this Thursday.